How's it going, guys? Surprise build today. Surprise to me, actually. I found myself in very recent, not quite need, but deep desire of a treadle hammer. I looked up tutorials on how to make treadle hammers, and it's actually really pretty easy. The only problem right now is it usually involves making your own anvil or using a separate anvil that you've bought or found somewhere. I don't have another anvil. I don't really have time to go find another anvil. I'm just trying to get a nice little easy treadle hammer finish so I can get back to the build that I was doing before that made me need a treadle hammer. So I've got what I feel like right now is a pretty good idea. I'm gonna try to make a removable treadle hammer that will attach to the anvil that I already have, and that you can obviously detach it as well to use this as a normal anvil. Famous last words. I think I can get this done pretty quick, so let's get it done pretty quick. Alright, handy dandy 16-pound sledge. Oh, extra stipulation. I don't want to destroy the hammer to make this treadle hammer. I want to be able to remove the sledge so I can still use it anytime I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and line up the head the best that I can with the base of the anvil that it's mounted to, so I can squeeze as much energy out of this 200-pound anvil that I possibly can. Measure from the end of the hammer to the hardy hole. It's about 28 inches, but I'm going to give it 30 inches so I got a little more to play with. So I'll need two 30-inch lengths of angle iron. Alright, now I'll need a 4 7/8 bar to go across and connect the two pieces of angle iron. And that bar needs a 1-inch hole in it for me to pass a big giant bolt through. So I'm going to take a couple of pieces, I'll cut a couple of half circles out, and I'll combine the two and do a new bar that has a 1-inch hole in it. Now for ease of use, the plan is to be able to attach this whole entire thing to the anvil super sturdily using one of these big giant 1-inch bolts going through the hardy hole. Now if we look underneath, you can see that I bought the bolt kind of long. I did this because of this angle here on the bottom of the anvil. You can see if I were to have bought the bolt just long enough so that the threads were going up into the hardy hole, once I screwed the nut on, only the very edge of it would be touching the anvil and I wouldn't get that maximum friction lock. So instead, I bought it long. I got this pipe here that fits perfectly over the bolt. I'm going to cut an angle into the pipe and leave the other end flat. I might even weld a washer onto the end. So this way I got a really nice flat surface to really tighten that nut down onto. Okay, I want this fit to be as snug as possible. So I'm actually going to tack it up here attached to the anvil. So I loaded up the welder in my welding cart and I brought it out here. Problem is I'm pulling power through about 150 feet of extension cord, so the amperage is definitely going to be suffering, but I don't know. Hopefully I got enough juice just to make a few tacks. Yeah, I'm getting no power out here. The machine's turned up almost all the way, and this is what the tacks are looking like. Hopefully these will hold just long enough for me to make it back to the garage and, you know, actually put a real weld on these things. Now I'm giving probably my least favorite tool of all time a single extra chance at life before it goes on offer up. The abrasive disc chop saw I despise with all my heart. For the life of me, I can't get a square cut out of this thing. It's somehow underpowered and also trips the breaker every single time. It's just so smoky and dusty. Doesn't blow me away this time. It's going on offer up for 20 bucks. Ugh, look at that burr. Disgusting. Hey, little word of advice, no real reason. If you ever need to cut a really small length of pipe right down the middle like this, don't do it on the bandsaw, because especially in this case where the tube is tapered, once you get to the very, very end, the blade is going to break through the bottom here before it breaks through the top. And once it breaks through that bottom part, the blade drags the top down at super speed and flips it down onto your thumb like a guillotine. So I would recommend, if you ever need to do something like this, instead clamp your pipe long ways in a vise so that there's no crushing force on the pipe ready to grab onto your blade as soon as you cut through. Pass through nice and clean with your handy dandy angle grinder, then flip it over and cut through the other side. Just a random little golden tidbit, again, no real reason. Alright, anyways, we're using this 2.5-inch square tubing as both a crossbar to keep the angle irons at an equal distance from each other, as well as an elevating platform for the pivot. The reason we don't want the pivot too low is because, let's say in the event that the pivot is on the same level as the surface of the anvil, what you'll find is that your hammer is not striking remotely flat. You're just gonna be dinging up whatever you're trying to flatten. So to fix the problem, we raise that pivot up just a few inches above the level of the surface of the anvil, then that's gonna be a lot better. And in fact, if we could just go a little bit past, then we'd be striking flat when there's some material underneath to squish. All right, I think I got a pretty good way of making this pivot nice and square. 1-inch rod, 3/8 nail. Then from the top, you can see this is a little easier to eyeball. So now I'm gonna clamp this. I can remove this rod, put the thing that holds the hammer on. And now I can adjust the straightness by just pushing the end here. Alrighty, I got the springs hooked up temporarily just to see if there's any, super fatal flaw in the design so far. And thank goodness I did, because I've been able to see that the action of it is just about perfect, so that is really encouraging, but there is a pretty huge flaw. If you give it just the tiniest little bit of side pressure, it just starts wibbling and wobbling like a mug. I'm gonna have to get pretty experimental, because it really is asking a lot of this 3/16 angle iron to resist the torsion from this super long lever arm. I've spent the day having a whole bunch of bad ideas, so, I'm just gonna have to try something and see if it sticks. I'm gonna try a little bit of cross bracing like on a bridge. If that doesn't work, hopefully it'll at least get me part of the way there, so that maybe an extra step will get me all the way there. So let's give it a shot. Alrighty, survey says. Hey, I'll say it definitely feels more sturdy. I think. Look, I don't know if it definitely helped, but it maybe definitely helped. For sure. I'm gonna just go ahead and get the pedal on here, and if it's like totally unusable, then I'll start gluing more stuff onto it. But I've spent way too much time on this thing already. Nice.